What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the show. This week, we're continuing this Get to Know Me series. So if you did not listen to the last episode, I encourage you to go check that one out because this one will kind of be part two to the last one. So last week, we talked a little bit about how I used to think I knew a lot of things. And in my early 20s, quickly figured out that I did not know that many things. And it was kind of a journey to start trying to figure those things out. We also talk about my philosophy on the who you know versus what you know conversation. So I've asked that question hundreds of times now on the show. And in this episode, or in the last episode, I actually give clarity about what my thoughts are on that. In this episode, we're talking a little bit more about how I started to gain more clarity after I lost all clarity, and what actions I took along the way. We talk about each individual venture that I tried, from network marketing companies to door-to-door sales to different sales opportunities to mortgage license to podcasting and everything in between, all in a very condensed period of time. And I give my best advice for people that are looking to get clarity in their lives. And we talk just about the importance of gaining clarity, and how crucial it is to do that on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. So this episode was a lot of fun, and we'll continue this series on the next one. So be on the lookout for the next episode to drop next week. If you didn't listen to the last episode, go check that one out and then listen to this one. Let me know what you think. Catch you on the next one.
So in our last conversation, we talked a lot about losing clarity. Like, I think your journey from birth really till early 20s, like very early 20s, was like absolute certainty. And then on this track to lacking any sort of clarity on what you want to do in business, life, relationships. And so in this episode, I want to talk a little bit more about the things you did to discover clarity. And what's interesting to me about your story, as someone who has heard your story many times, is that many people tend to stall out once they lose absolute certainty and clarity, especially coming from like backgrounds like ours. I think people come out and say, I don't know what to do now, so I'm going to play a lot of video games.
Yeah.
And I'm going to
talk shit about everybody from the church.
Yeah. And I'm going to basically be like, spend the rest of my life like the quarterback that like hurt his leg in school, where it's like, man, if they hadn't done that, if they'd give me options, I could be here.
Right.
And what's interesting about your story is that you took a lot of really chaotic action, like very quickly. And you've constantly said the quote, like, action brings clarity. So how did you determine that? What prompted you to actually start taking action instead of going the route of, well, I'll work at Chili's and hate the church that's like 3 blocks over for the next, next 6 months to 60 years?
Honestly, dude, it's a good question, because when I first started, there just wasn't an alternative to me. Like, action was the only, like, it's action or homelessness. You know what I mean? Like, I got married before I left college. I got married and still had a semester of college left, and then moved to Fresno, bought a house, and then all of a sudden didn't know what I was going to be doing with the rest of my life. And it's like, well, now I have a mortgage and I have like less than 10 grand in my bank account. So like, I got to do something. I can't just sit on my hands, or I can't just, sleep on my buddy's couch or whatever. It's like action was required. You know what I mean? And in a lot of ways, I'm really grateful for that, because it just forced me to do things. And I think I really realized it when it was more articulated to me from guests that I had on my show. Like, when I interviewed Jay Papazan the first time out in Austin, one of the first in-person interviews I ever did. And he's the co-author of The One Thing and The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, and does a lot of stuff with Gary Keller, for Keller Williams. And Jay was really interesting to talk to. And one of the stories I remember him telling, or an example, an illustration, is that he said, that action always provides clarity, and it's not the other way around. And most people are always sitting around on their hands, waiting for clarity to come before they take action. Which
I didn't
theoretically,
that as a Jay Papazan quote, but
I don't think it was his quote, but I remember this illustration.
It could be Jay's quote.
Yeah, we'll give it to Jay. But yeah, he said, clarity or action brings clarity. And he gave this example of, like, imagine you're dropped off in the middle of the ocean and there's an island that's within swimming distance, but just out of sight. He was like, you are just wading water in the middle of the ocean. You have the option of just sitting there, contemplating which direction you should go, spinning in circles, looking at, the sun and looking at the clouds and looking at what you think might be the best move. And you're just looking around, getting exhausted, wading water. Or you can immediately just start swimming in a direction. And then as soon as you realize that direction was the incorrect direction, you turn around and go back to where you started, and then you take action in another direction. Which of those two people is going to end up finding the island and saving themselves, and which of those people is just going to drown in the middle of the ocean because they never did anything? And it's the person who just wades water because they don't, I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to swim in the wrong direction, because then I'll waste time swimming in the wrong direction. So let me just sit here and think about which direction might make the most sense. But the other person's the one who ends up finding the island because they might get lucky and find it the first direction they head in. But, more often than not, it doesn't work that way. Sometimes it does. When you see, those are the stories that get put on the news, by the way, is like, those are the ones that make everybody think that it's possible to have overnight success. It's just like the 1 in a million
it's
who
I made an app
right
in my dorm.
Right. And now I'm a multi-billionaire and everybody knows who I am. It's like, well, that's
why don't you do that?
Not how it works for most people. You're going to have to, and even within the story of building Facebook, they took a bunch of directions that ended up working out. And then they finally found the one that did really well. But yeah, it's always going to be the person who just takes action. And I found it to be just kind of this loop. It's like action provides clarity, and then clarity encourages action, and then action provides more clarity, and just kind of this like loop that continues to help itself out. It's like gaining clarity is not something that you do one time. It's something that you do on a daily or weekly or monthly or quarterly, annual basis. And one of the most important things I think that you can do, and what all high performers have in common, is they have clarity around where they're headed. But you have to take action before the fog starts moving away. You can't just stay safely in the harbor and hope that one day you get this epiphany that's going to tell you exactly where you're going to go.
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to have to take some action. And so, I think I kind of lucked into that just because it made sense to me. It was just like, I got to do something. So I just did sales for quite a while. But the thing is, I don't know, dude, I probably tried like 14 things in a 6 or 7 year period. And I'm not exaggerating. Like, if I really try to go back and think through all that, like, before I graduated college, I did my first ever network marketing company. Didn't go well. Then I got recruited to another network marketing company because I was doing that first one. And I got to the point where I was making like $600 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
And at the time I thought that was awesome.
That's better than 90% of people in network marketing.
Right.
Who are spending $600 to get the product to start selling.
Exactly. Then from there, I got recruited into a third network marketing company, which was the DirecTV one that I was talking about in the last episode. And that one actually started going pretty well. I got like 60, 70 people like in my, downline or whatever. And I was selling solar still full time and finishing college at the same time. So always like doing something, and then that company was the one that switched to a door-to-door compensation plan rather than a network or like MLM model. And so I did door-to-door for them after leaving the solar company. So like just up to this point, it's like I had this network marketing company, a DirecTV network marketing company, selling solar for this first company, Varango, and then switching to selling solar for this other company, Solar City. And then moving to Fresno, working for the church for like a week, internal transfer, selling solar, recruited to do the door-to-door DirecTV and alarms. And then from there got recruited into alarms. All of that, it would happen in like a year. That's like the first year and a half while I was finishing up college and after college. Then while I was selling alarms, got recruited to another network marketing company. And I started, doing that very, very part-time. That one I never was like really on board for. I just kind of liked the product and I bought it and I figured why not try to, make my money back or whatever. So I did that one a little bit. And that was the year that I was really focused on selling alarms. And that was the first year I made 6 figures. I was like 22, I think, by the end of the year, and did alarms the whole year. And then after that is when I was trying to start a remote office for that alarm company. And that was the plan for like a while. But then basically what ended up being like a falling out with me and my first kind of, whatever, quote unquote mentor there was that like a week before I was going to move back to Lancaster from Fresno to start an alarm office in Lancaster.
Which is, I think, right when I actually met you.
Yeah, right around that time, because that's when you started.
I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I always met you leaving places.
Yeah, because I had recruited Dale. Yeah. And then Dale was like, hey, you should come check this out. And then you started doing that. And then I left to go to Lancaster and start this office. You crushed that first day.
Yep.
Yeah, well done. But yeah, so like literally the week before I'm gonna like move my life to Lancaster, start recruiting and doing alarms or whatever. He goes like, hey, it's a lot of risk for me to like put out this much equipment with you. I need you to like buy your first batch of equipment. It's going to be almost $20,000. And I was like, that's like all of the money in my savings account.
Yeah.
Like we didn't talk about this before. It was just like all of a sudden sprung on me. So he did that and then changed the compensation plan on me and then didn't give me the support staff he said he would. Like 3 or 4 things that were just like, you're crippling me. Like you're taking out my knees right now when I'm trying to grow your office for you,
Looking back, do you think that was purely a financial thing or do you think it was like a
control
insecurity of like, you're going to outshine
absolutely
what
that
I'm doing?
Not necessarily outshine, but like that I might get recruited from another company and take everything with me that I built under his brand and using his, the risks that he was taking as a business owner. He was very much like a us four no more type of a guy. Like he wasn't looking to expand. I was the one that wanted to expand.
Oh, he was like comfortable.
He was cool just being in Fresno.
Good money.
And he liked keeping a tight leash on his top performers because he knew that, they got poached all the time in that industry. And so he wanted me to stay close. Exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody did it. It's like, it's a dog world because the reps are the people who make the company's money. And so whoever has the best reps makes the most money. And so, yeah, it was just this whole thing. So he wanted to keep a tight leash and basically just like stop supporting and made it more difficult for me to launch this office. And when I came back, I was like, look, I may as well just come back to Fresno. We still own this house, whatever. I'm like, this is obviously not going well. You clearly don't want me to do this. So let me just come back. And then he's like, you can come back, but I'm not going to give you your old team back, who I recruited every person on my team. He didn't like give me people. I recruited them personally, trained them personally, and managed them. But when I was going to Lancaster, they moved to different teams. So like you and Dale would have been on my team, but like you were working, I think, with Sean at the time because I was going to Lancaster. So it was like, let's place you with other managers. So he was like, but these managers have been working with your guys, so you don't get your guys back. First of all. And second of all, I'm going to cut your compensation down. Like I was making less at that time per deal than I was making when I first got recruited to the company. So it was almost like a show of force or a show of strength to be like, you're going to come crawling back to me after it didn't work out for you. I'm going to like take away your pay, take away your team and make you start from scratch essentially. And it was like, all right, well, this isn't my jam either. You know what I mean? So that was about the time where I was stopping with that. During that time period, also got recruited to another network marketing company that I was like actually pretty excited for. It was this big launch in LA. First time I'd been around a bunch of like really big multimillionaires.
Company?
It was right before that.
Okay.
This company this company called Jeunesse, and it was like supplements and whatever. And we got to work on selling that because again, this big launch in LA, the most money I'd ever been around in my life was this launch that they had. One of the most profitable network marketers. He pulls $2 million a month. He's in like 8-9 different companies. He holds top positions. He recruits people. Like he's very much a business person. He owns several other businesses, but he makes cash flow through network marketing companies. And he just holds top positions, puts people in, plugs and plays like recruiters. And he's really honestly a marketing genius, but he made a ton of money in that world and stays under the radar for obvious reasons. And so they put together this big launch. I was all excited about it. Came back. We started hustling it for like a month. And then right at that time, everybody from that world started getting recruited into this water company called Enagic. And that was probably the one I did the best at. It was like selling $3,000 to $5,000 countertop water ionizers. And I thought the compensation plan was awesome at the time. And so I started hustling that at the end of selling alarms. And then the owner of that alarm company found out that I had recruited 1 or 2 guys that I was working with. And he hated that. And he thought I was trying to steal his guys. I'm like, bro, I'm not stealing anybody. It's a completely different business model, completely different world, completely like not even the same at all. Everybody that is like on my team still works here. I still work here. I still make you money. And that's when he like lost his shit and basically stopped talking to me and like cut me off from everybody. So stopped selling alarms. I'm still hustling Enagic, which is these water machines. But they're in retrospect, their comp plan really just, it sucked. It just wasn't good. At the time, I thought it was really good. Basically, every network marketing company has this big, awesome comp plan. And then once you start selling, it's like, oh, well, you didn't do this one particular thing.
Right.
So you don't actually get the full check. You know what I mean? So, so instead of getting like $1,000 commission checks, like I thought I was going to be getting, I'm getting $50 commission checks, for selling these $4,000 water machines. And so during this time, I was like, I got to make some real money again. So I go work for Home Depot. I was a outside sales rep for Home Depot, which I didn't know existed at the time, but they have this 100% commission outside sales rep thing where they send you on appointments to go sell roofing. So HDE, Home Depot exterior. So roofing, siding, gutters, insulation, windows. I think we're all.
And that wasn't cold. That was like, we have leads, go here.
Correct. Yeah. Like I didn't have to go knock doors.
Yeah.
It was like, but yeah, Home Depot would generate leads and then I would go out on
to sell them the door.
Correct. Yeah. Well, actually doors were one side.
I would have knocked, but you don't have a door out of this.
Yeah. So I started selling for Home Depot. That was one of the first times I learned the lesson of I can only sell things I really believe in. So that was the only sales job in my life up to that point that I did not do well at. And it was because anytime I got an objection, I was kind of like, yeah, you're right. This is way too expensive. I wouldn't buy this either. So I lasted there for like 3 months, because I did it because a friend of mine was making like 30 grand a month selling for Home Depot. I was like, that's a trusted brand. Seems like a good idea. Let's do it. But yeah, like I said, when I got down to the pitch, I was just like, I would not buy this. Like you should not buy this.
I'm trying to sell you a window that's a centimeter thicker than the window you have.
Right. Yeah. And like there were like, I'm all for quality work, but it was like some of the jobs I was bidding, I'd be like, it's 18 grand to replace your windows, and another window company would come in and they do it for like 6,500. It's like, I mean, at that rate, they could totally screw it up 3 times over. And like, you know what I mean? Like I was just, I did not believe in the product, and for whatever reason, I just couldn't do it. So that was a big lesson for me at that time. I was just like, I can't do something I don't believe in.
Yeah.
So I'm still selling water machines on the side. I'm working for Home Depot. At this point, I'm just like banging my head against the wall, trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. So I was applying, I actually was looking at getting back into solar. Because they were going to give me like a company car, salary, commission, this whole thing to work back at Solar City. But I actually had a conversation, the last conversation I ever had with this guy that was a mentor of mine at the time. I think he was just coming to check on me to make sure that I was like, not winning in life. So he could beat me while I was down a little bit. But he came over and did give me like one final piece of advice that I took into a lot of my 20s. Which was I was looking at selling mortgages or going back to Solar City. And it was like Solar City was like, I knew I could do that. It's like salary, benefits, commission. I know how to sell solar. I already know that whole deal. I know I can do that. And selling mortgages was like, oh, that's a 100% commission, dog eat dog type thing again. So should I try this thing or should I do that? I'm still selling these water machines on the side. And so he told me something that I never forgot. He was like, look, man, you're too young to do the guaranteed thing. He's like, the safe option will always be there. Like if I were you, I would do the thing that you think that, you can do. And I was like, all right, that's good advice probably. So I studied for my mortgage license, and right around this time is when I was listening to a ton of podcasts. And that was when I took the free podcast course from John Lee Dumas. So I'm studying for my mortgage license, taking a free podcast course, selling a Magic on the side. All and coming out of working for Home Depot, all in that like 1 month period of time.
Right.
The whole year I did not make that much money. So I stopped selling alarms in like February. I sold a solar deal or two with this connection that I had that were like big deals. I made like 8-10 grand in commission per deal, and like did a couple things like that throughout the year. But mostly it was just Jackie was working.
Yeah.
We had some savings and I was just trying to figure out what I was doing, but I was hustling all these things that whole time. And then I stopped doing Home Depot. Right when I'm done like studying for my mortgage exam, my buddy Pablo hits me up, a guy that I sold alarms with. He had stopped selling alarms, or no, he was still selling alarms at the time. And he was like, hey man, he was on my water team at Enagic. Turns out he was knocking doors for alarms, runs into this guy that's knocking doors for water purifiers. They try to sell each other on being on each other's teams for water purification. Ends up, this guy's like, look, we'll pay you $3,000 a deal to sell water purification door to door. And like, again, Enagic, come to find out the commission checks are $50 to $100, per deal. If you get lucky, you might get $1,000 or $2,000. If they do like a full pay, if they paid in full for it rather than financing it. And so he starts selling these water machines, and he was like, it's actually pretty good. So he calls me and was like, bro, you should come sell some water machines with me. And at the time I was like really opposed to it because I was still pushing in Magic. I was like 50, 60 machines in at this point, like about to rank up to their like highest, rank or whatever, or like the rank that everybody wants to rank. And, but then he showed me his paycheck and I was like, all right, I could be convinced to like maybe go try this out for a little bit. So like I started working the last week of October selling water machines. And it's funny because I passed my mortgage exam, but I never mailed in the application to actually get my license, which, it's basically just send us your results and we'll give you your license. I never got to, it sat in the glove compartment of my car for like a year. I never sent it in. I never actually got licensed from the NMLS, because I started selling water machines. I was like, from the last week of October to December, and I worked half of December because we were traveled for like the holidays. So like last week of October, all of November, the first like week or two of December, I made like 25 grand, 25, 30 grand in that period of time. It was like 6-8 weeks selling water machines. And I was like, yeah, maybe I don't need to get my mortgage, longer sales cycle, way more difficult clients, these is like 2-week sales cycle. I can pop $3,000 on a deal. And so I started selling water purification with this company in Fresno. Well, around this time is when Jackie's dad ends up passing away. We get a call like right after the holidays were over, beginning of 2016. 17. No, 16. No, 17. January 17, we get a call and Jackie's dad's in the hospital and we think everything's fine. We go up, we're the closest ones to him. He's in Lodi, which is like an hour and a half north of Fresno. So we go to like check up on him. We think he's going to be fine, but we walk around the corner and turns out it was very, very serious. He's in the ICU. And he ended up passing 10 days later. And so that was a crazy situation that rocked our world. Anytime you're sitting in a situation like that, it's a big wake up call, but especially when it's like, her dad and then me sitting there watching her go through this and then not having a ton of support system for it, being in the room, like watching someone take their final breath and then watching, the person that you love the most, watching that happen with their dad. It was just like, it was such a crazy experience and really surreal. It feels like it happened on a different timeline in a different universe for some reason. Well, I know the reason because we were just all sleepless and sleeping like on the floor in the hospital, just trying to make it through that. So it feels like it didn't even happen. You know what I mean? But after that happened, we just realized we didn't have a big support system in Fresno anymore because like when we left the alarm company, nobody from that world talked to me because the owner of that company went and talked shit on me to all the people who I had worked with to that point, which is exactly what happened when I left the church. You know what I mean? So it's like, leave the church, everybody talks shit. I leave the alarm company, everybody talks shit. And people actively rooting against me. You know what I mean? It was just like, we felt lonely again. We were kind of like by ourselves. And so we're like, why are we still in Fresno at this point? You know what I mean? It was only to go to the church that we were going to. And so we ended up just being like, let's move back to Lancaster. So move back to Lancaster. And I found this company that was selling water machines, the same water machines I was selling, but they were paying $5,000 a deal instead of $3,000 a deal. And so I made a deal with them to start selling for them directly. So now I'm like a sub dealer for a water machine company. And then that is when I hired my podcast coach. So right when we were moving, I hired my podcast coach and was selling water machines. Joined my first like mastermind, coaching, all that stuff, while I was still selling water machines. And then 6-7 months later, we moved to Vegas because the water quality out here was terrible and no state income tax. And my brother-in-law lived out here and it was close to home, but it wasn't Lancaster. And we wanted to go somewhere where like stuff happened rather than where nothing happened, like Lancaster. So we came out to Vegas and immediately we moved in 6 roommates with us that were sales reps for the water company. So it was like, that was part of the deal. It was like, hey, you guys come out to Vegas, I'll train you and teach you how to sell these water machines and I'll pay you X per deal. And so now I'm building like my own water team, but to the degree where like we get a place that we rented that was just like, it was a really nice place, a really nice part of town. And then we moved in 6 people with us, 2 of whom we met the day they moved in. And then the other 4, like we had met a month or 2 prior, so it's not like we were besties with these people. It's just like, it just never crossed my mind to not do what it took to get what I wanted, if that made sense. Like even when we were trying to start the alarm office in Lancaster, from Fresno. I was driving Fresno to Lancaster every week for like 8 weeks, like always driving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and staying in crappy parts of town and just trying to like make something happen. Just like there's so many times that we just did crazy stuff, but there never seemed to be another option to me. It was just like, I got to figure something out.
Yeah.
It's not just going to fall in my lap. You know, I got dealt a hand that maybe I didn't like. I'm not going to say it was a shitty hand because there's a lot of great things that I take away from my childhood, but it's like wasn't as conducive to doing the thing that I wanted to do.
Sure. And in the business realm. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I didn't, have the opportunity to go to a good school and get an MBA and go work on Wall Street or whatever, it's just like, but the alternative is like, don't do anything. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't a good alternative. So just whenever we had to do something, we just did it. So even when it was moving 6 people into our house that we didn't know, it was still like, yeah, it feels like this is what we got to do right now.
Right.
And so now my podcast is running. I'm trying to start making money doing that, but I'm really still making the bulk of my money from door-to-door water purification sales. And then
but just before you keep going, like you throw in, okay, there's podcast coach. I'm taking this course to learn how to do it. What was even the thought process of like, why start a podcast? Like, because I think you kind of skip that section of like, it's part of the journey, but it's also one of those things where it's like, that doesn't seem to fit any of the other actions at the time.
Basically, it was just a matter of realizing that freedom was my ultimate value. And so I wanted freedom, but not just financial freedom. I saw people that had money, but they were tied to their jobs. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of what I experienced when I was selling alarms. Obviously, I wasn't making a crazy amount of money, but I was making 6 figures and felt like, that was my goal for forever. 6 figures seemed like that's the pinnacle, And I made 6 figures and realized that like I couldn't leave town. I couldn't go travel. I couldn't do any of the things I wanted to do because if I left, I wasn't making money.
Yeah.
So I had theoretically financial freedom because I was making decent money. But I didn't have location freedom. I couldn't do it from anywhere and I couldn't go wherever I wanted. And I had some time freedom because I only worked like 4 or 5 hours a day. We only worked from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. whenever people were home. So I had some time freedom, and a little bit of financial freedom, but I didn't have any location freedom. And I was started realizing like, if I want to live the life that I really want to live, it comes with all of these: location freedom, time freedom, financial freedom. Like it comes with all the different types of freedom for me to ultimately be able to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. And so podcasting, I found a couple people that were just making a crazy amount of money doing podcasting. And it was like, that would give me all the things that I want. Plus it would help me start to get to know some of these people that I want to rub shoulders with. And so it became kind of like, it just made sense where I was just like, if I do this long enough, I could probably make good money doing it. But also in the meantime, there's going to be some other benefits from doing this type of content. So,
do you think subconsciously you were also, because you were heavily focused on interviews from day one, do you think you're subconsciously trying to fill the role of the mentor that you kind of lost?
I think in retrospect, it'd be easy to say that, but I don't remember that being a motivator at the time.
Yeah.
I mainly only did interviews because I had at least enough self-awareness to understand that like nobody's going to want to listen to a 24-year-old door-to-door salesman on advice for their career.
That's rare self-awareness in the podcasting space.
Yeah, in the door-to-door space.
People don't want to listen
in sales.
to me.
Like I was just like, yeah, but I knew that, like at least I had enough self-awareness to be like, maybe people don't want to listen to me, but if I get good people, they'll want to listen to them. Mm-hmm. I just have to get better at making sure that I'm having good conversations with those people. But if theoretically, like if I brought Barack Obama on tomorrow, probably a lot of people would listen. Yeah. You know what I mean? Even though they don't know who I am. And that's when I adopted that Steve Martin quote, the "be so good they can't ignore you" thing, where I was just like, if I can just get the best people to say yes to the interviews on my show, then people are going to have to respect my show. It's not a matter of me. It's not a matter of how much I learn or what I'm trying to share. It's just a matter of me getting in front of the right people and then shining light on those people and letting them give the bulk of the content because there's a crazy amount of value in what they're about to say. So that was kind of the intention from the beginning. I would like to think that I had more foresight than I did, but I don't think I did at the time.
Yeah, I was just curious if it was something where there was, it wasn't a conscious thing, but I just hearing it, I've heard you've shared kind of this outline before, but I wonder if there was like a subconscious, like, guidance.
It could be.
Seeking,
It could have been
you know,
subconscious at
don't want
least.
to therapy you too much, but
Yeah, it definitely could have been because I was searching for that. I always wanted that.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I wanted, like,
And you were
craved
kind
that.
of taught to, I think a benefit again of how we grew up is there was an emphasis on looking to mentors.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it was misguided in what kind of mentors, like what to look for in a mentor.
And how much authority and power you gave them in
Right.
life,
But I
which
think
is where another tenet of
getting
mine
wisdom
comes
from others was huge. And that's kind of what I want to ask is, you know, before we dive deep into the podcasting side, for you, action definitely brings clarity. The School of Hard Knocks brings clarity. Knocking a bunch of doors in a bunch of different industries brings clarity. But also, you've talked to a lot of people and you've learned to avoid their mistakes. You know, where do you think the balance is between just observing what other people have done and making decisions based on what you definitely don't want from their decisions versus, you know, trying and seeing for yourself? Because there's always that X factor of maybe they were really shitty at sales and I wouldn't be, or maybe that didn't work out for them because they were a crappy husband or whatever. Like, where do you find that balance between see for yourself versus learn from others?
It's a really difficult question to answer because it's so nuanced. It's like the way that I make those decisions is based on my own values. Like, what do I value enough to find out the answer for myself? Like somebody, you know, could tell me to whatever, drinking was bad my whole life. And if you ever take a sip of liquor, you're going to be, you know, given blowjobs for coke in an alley someday. You know what I mean?
What's the downside?
But that was one of those things that I just was like, that doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, right.
And it seems fun.
There's somewhere in the middle.
I would rather try that
Yeah.
and see if it's going to be that for myself.
Yeah.
And I did. And
you
to
found
this
out.
day, I've only blown a couple guys
Yeah.
for coke
No.
in an alley.
Only
but
on
yeah,
Saturdays.
it's just, to me, it comes down to like, how can I talk myself out of this? You know, and sometimes I can't. And I find that to be like a driver. And it really goes into the regret conversation. The like, I fear regret more than I fear embarrassment, or I fear regret more than I fear failure. And so, you know, you do that rocking chair test and picture yourself as, you know, 100-year-old you on your rocking chair on your front porch. Pretty much your whole life is lived. You don't really have the ability to go back and change anything. You know, what would you have done differently? Like that to me is a big indicator of whether or not I'm going to try something, regardless of if people tell me it's a bad idea or it's a good idea. It's like, you know, an expert can tell me it's a bad idea all day, but if I can't get it out of my head, and I know that if I fast forward to 90-year-old Travis sitting on the rocking chair, that I'm going to look back and be like, man, what could have happened if I just did that thing?
Yeah.
You know, or if, like, I let that be the driver, and then, you know, try to figure it out from there. If I do end up taking the plunge or, like, you know, take the jump, it's like, sometimes it's going to go well, sometimes it's not going to go well. And basically my entire professional life has been a series of failures that have just landed me more success along the way, if that makes sense. Like, each failure brings a little bit more success, but it's like, it still dumps me out at a place that I like, man, I wish that venture would have gone like this, or my goal or my intention was to be this or to do that. But also it ended up taking me to this new plateau, this new level that I haven't experienced yet, allowed me to, like, get all these experiences, meet these people, learn these lessons, sharpen these skills, and now I can take that into the next thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how many things I've just mentioned, but that's got to be like 12 or 15, like, just up to this point. But before I even got into podcasting, just to get up to the, you know, selling water purification systems, and then eventually started the podcast, and then, you know, coaching, and then masterminds and courses and software and an agency and all the stuff that's happened since then. But nothing would happen if you don't just take the first step, you know, and not care if you fail or if you're embarrassed along the way. It's just like, life's a long game. Most long-winded way to answer that question is basically like, I guess, do you want it bad enough, and will you regret it if you don't do it? Because, you know, a lot of the most risky things, people who love you are trained to tell you to not do them because of the inherent risk that's involved in those things. But sometimes you just care enough about something to figure it out for yourself. Yeah. And it's like, they might be right. Maybe you fast forward the clock 3 years and it's like, man, I should have listened to those people, or because I would have saved myself from bankruptcy or whatever, you know. But also at this point in my life, I'm okay with that being the result. If I want it bad enough, or if I want to find out for myself bad enough, I've come to terms with the fact that like the failure could be a potential outcome. So anything other than that is a net positive. You know what I mean? Even if it doesn't go exactly how I wanted it to go, it's like still a net positive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even my software companies, like it didn't, like the way that I built it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, but it's still a net positive. It's still a profitable company that pays me and my employees and keeps us all, you know, working and keeps food on the table and whatever. It's like, yeah, I want it to go better. And I do think that now that we've done a couple of deals that we've done recently, I think that we're going to have a very bright future with it. My point is to say that like, if you can wrap your head around the fact that it might go worst case scenario and you can get okay with that, then anything else that happens is like, you know, icing on the cake. And it's just, you have to engage in the adventure.
Yeah.
You know, the adventure is the piece that you got to be willing to engage in, because you're just, again, you can stay safely in the harbor. You know, like if you're in New York City and you know that you want to go somewhere, but you don't know where it is because New York's home and that's it. It's like you can either stay in New York City and think about it for the rest of your life, or you can get in the boat and figure out if you want to go to Southampton, England, or, you know, Cape Town, South Africa, or anywhere in between. But you can figure that out along the way, and you're more likely to figure out where you want to go when you're in the middle of the ocean and you're going through the shit. Like you're in the middle of like this big storm and you don't know what's going to happen, and you're, you know, confused and you're excited and you have all these different like you're way more likely to be able to find clarity in that moment than you are just like sitting on the dock in New York City just being like, man, I wonder what my adventure could be like. Because that's the crazy thing about it, man, is like you think you're choosing the safe option if you stay in New York, but then comes something like a 9/11, you know, to use a real life example. It's like the safe option is never as safe as you think it is my point.
Yeah.
So if you choose the safe option, not only are you robbing yourself of the potential joy of discovery, but you're also probably not even staying safe. Yeah. So even if your value is safety, it's not even a safe option, because anything can happen in the safe option, just like anything can happen in the non-safe option. So you may as well choose the non-safe option, because at least with it will bring you adventure, excitement, fulfillment, happiness, meaning, like joy, all these other things that come from adventuring out into the unknown. Yeah. If you stay in the known, if you stay in safety, you know, it's optimized to trick you into believing that safety is the ultimate value when it's really not, and you're not even actually safe to begin with.
Yeah.
So
somebody said that to me once. I'm like, what if you lost your clients? You know, like, I want you to a safe job. I'm like, what if I lost my job?
Right. Exactly.
Like, it's literally the same thing. You know,
except for one way, you have more control over how you can go replace that income.
Right.
Like I know if I lose everything, like I can go replace my income with clients or business or sales, because I know how to go fish. Mm-hmm. You know, like if I'm just relying on somebody to give me a job, it's like, that to me, that's scarier, because it's like, I don't have any control over that. I don't have control over whether or not somebody wants to hire me. You know, I know you could like sell or whatever.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, there's risk involved in everything, including the safe option, is my point. So it's like, why not choose the thing that has the ability to bring you everything you want, rather than choosing the thing that's just safe and will never bring you the things that you want?
I'm curious, with this theme of action bringing clarity, does the journey of taking action to find clarity have a definitive destination or conclusion?
No, because clarity's, like I said, clarity's
take a
like,
second to think about it.
Because clarity's like a weekly thing.
Yeah.
You know, one of the first books I actually read when I was starting on this journey or whatever was High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard. And he just gives like 6 things that high performers have in common, 6 things that they do regularly. And the very first thing is clarity. And I remember it caught me off guard at the time, because you think like clarity is just like a thing. Like, I was called to ministry at 12. I'm clear on what I want to do with my life. Now everything's based on that. It's like, no, clarity is something that you got to do all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a weekly practice to make sure that you're adjusting course along the way. Because the worst case scenario is to climb a mountain your whole life and then get to the top of it, look over at another mountain and be like, I actually wanted to be on the top of that mountain. You know, like that is the story of somebody who never gains any clarity and never is introspective and never asks themselves questions. They lack self-awareness. They're doing everything on autopilot because it's how culture and society and their family and their friends and the people and the influences in their life have told them to do their whole lives. So they just keep on this treadmill of action that's just like without ever stopping or pausing to gain any clarity around where they're headed. And then they wake up and they realize that I did want to be in Cape Town, South Africa. And I'm in Southampton, England, and I'm 64 years old. How am I going to get down there this quickly? It's just like, you have to be willing to take clarity or to get clarity along the way. And those first actions, like when I say take action, sometimes people are like, but what do I do? And I totally get that. But the answer is, you know what to do. You know something that you can do differently than you're currently doing. Something. Like there's something in your life that's not where you want it to be. What is it? Do something to change it now, today. Like don't wait for it. Regardless of what that is, whether it's I drink too much soda or I drink too much alcohol or I haven't exercised in 4 years, or like something really simple like that you can easily change tomorrow by just starting to go for a 10-minute walk every day. Yeah. Or like I need to read more than I watch TV, or like, I need to get better at my job. I need to take another course. There's something that that you can do. There's a lever that you can pull right now that would put you on a path toward finding out what the rest of your life looks like or what you want it to look like. So if you do something to head in that direction at all, then like the next step will reveal itself along the way. But like if you just stay here, you're not going to see the next step. No. The fog's not going to clear. It's just going to get worse. No. And then you're stuck with that regret thing, which is the thing that gets me up, up in the morning, is just thinking about like, man, I forget what it's called, the regret project or something like that. Someone did that one time. They put a website together, and it was I want to say the regret project, but anyway, they just opened up an open forum for anybody that wanted to go on there and put one of their regrets from their life. And that became this whole thing. And the person wrote a book about it. It was a really famous study, and I don't know why I'm blanking on it, but what they found was that regrets of omission were much, much, much higher in volume than regrets of commission. So people were way more likely and are way more likely to regret things they didn't do rather than things that they did.
Yeah, I should have. I
Correct.
wish I'd.
Right. Not like, man, I shouldn't have done that thing. Yeah. Way more people regret not doing something than they did regret doing something, which tells me that most people are just sitting on their hands. They're waiting for this magical moment of clarity, or for somebody to hand them an opportunity on a silver platter. And it's just like, man, you're gonna be waiting a long time before something like that happens. Like the people who get the most opportunities, the people who appear to be the luckiest in life, are the people who are doing more than everybody else. Yeah. Because they, we talk about this all the time, but they're engineering serendipity. And it sounds counterintuitive because serendipity by definition is unengineerable. You can't, it's serendipitous. That's what makes it serendipitous, is that you can't engineer it. But the people who are constantly doing stuff, constantly meeting people, constantly putting themselves in the places where successful people are, where things are happening, where deals are being made, those people tend to get more opportunities. They tend to have more serendipitous moments. They tend to get luckier because they're constantly just doing things. They're taking way more shots on goal. They have so many more at-bats where it's like, yeah, you might not hit a home run on your first time. You might strike out the first time. You might strike out the first 50 times. But 51st time, you probably learned a thing or two from the first 50 times. Maybe you hit a single on this one. Maybe the next time you hit a double. Maybe next time you strike out again. Next time you bunt and you get back on first base. But you keep doing that long enough, like you're going to knock it out of the park at some point. Not just because you have a volume of at-bats, but because you get better at doing that thing in the meantime. Like your skill set is improved. So every time you step up to bat, you have a little bit slightly higher of a chance of knocking it out of the park than you did the last time, because you learned where to put your feet. You learned how to twist your hips. You learned how to swing the bat through, and you learned a better follow through. And you learned, you know what I mean? Like you learned when to swing. You learn the timing better. Like everything improves the more at bats you take. And that's why it appears that these people get lucky all the time. It's like, oh, you're just so lucky. You get all these opportunities and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, it's just because I've taken a ton of swings, man. Like so many swings. And I'm 31. Like if you wrote out all of the things that we talked about that I've like done up to this point, it would look like a 35-year career or 40-year career. No. And it's like some of those things were done for 6 weeks, but that was all the action I needed to get clear on the fact that I did not want to do that any longer. You know what I mean? So like, well, cool. I can scratch that off the list. What's next? Let's try something else. Like you got to go do things, taste things, figure things out, experience things, because that's what's going to provide the clarity. Even if the clarity is as simple as like, I know I don't want to do this. No. Scratch it off the list. What do I want to try next? What do I want to think about doing next? You know what I mean? Like And through that entire process, again, you're accumulating skills along the way. That's why it's like, if I started, like, me at 31 starting a business versus me at 21 starting a business has such a higher likelihood of being successful in that business, because now I know like 8 different things that I didn't know at this time. Like, I know like high level operations of a business. I know what a P&L is. I know what a balance sheet is. Like, I didn't know what those things were when I was coming out of Bible college. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know how to sell. So now I can be a salesperson for my own company. I didn't know how to market. Now we've done, successful marketing campaigns. I know at least high level marketing where I can, make an informed decision on a great CMO to hire for my company. Like, there's so many things that I've learned along the way by taking that action that will now make it more likely that whatever I do, whatever the next thing is, will be more successful, not because, I got lucky, but because I've been working on these skills for a decade now, and they start to stack over time. And you do things long enough, like eventually, again, you stand up to bat long enough, eventually you're going to hit a home run.
Yeah.
There's this really good quote from, I think it was from 12 Rules for Life. I need to get better at writing down who said things. So if it's not Jordan Peterson, I apologize, but I think it was Jordan Peterson that said this. Constant failure is hope, because outside of everything you know is everything you don't know. And that's where untold opportunities lie. And I don't remember if that was like an exact quote. I just have it in my life lessons, and I want to say it was from 12 Rules for Life. But that quote always stuck with me. It's like, that kind of defines my 20s. Is like, it felt like constant failure. It felt like hitting wall after wall. It feels like obstacle after obstacle, and nothing ever went well for me. But then I look back on it, it's like, I don't know, like things went pretty well, actually. Like, I learned some stuff along the way. I never took a job and still supported my family and still increased my net worth and still met all these people and still was able to like build businesses that do 7 figures. And I was still able to like, accomplish a lot of these things. But because I have this picture in my mind of where I was supposed to be, it's like, well, that feels like failure. But really, that constant failure is just hope, because every time you fail, you learn something. Like, there's something outside of that you didn't know before that now you have the opportunity to learn. And that's where improvement comes from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something I always say is that it's who you are matters a lot more than what you do. And I think you always get asked the question in kindergarten, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think a far more important question is, who do you want to be?
Yes.
Like, what are your, gets into values? What do you want to be known for? Who do you want carrying your casket, kind of thing? Like those conversations. You probably don't want to ask a 5-year-old that, but it's one of those.
But I get the idea behind
that really
the question.
Matters. Yeah. And so we've talked.
And sorry to cut you off, but also on that is that it's not just a more important question for those reasons. It's a more important question because the what you want to do is inseparable from who you are. And if you don't get it through your mind that you need to work on you first, then you'll never be the person capable of doing the things that you want to do.
It's why the guys who don't have any greater motivation than just the money, just the dollar signs, end up in prison for fraud.
Yeah, right.
It's the reason that people who only want a big business end up divorced and lonely. It's the reason that people that, just want happy family and don't think of any other piece of that end up with nothing to show for it.
It's also where the root of like ego and narcissism is, that like, the confidence competence scale. It's like their confidence far surpasses their competence. It's like, that's that person. The unearned confidence person is the person who's like really clear on what they want. Like, they want to be a millionaire, but they don't realize that the version of themselves that they have to become in order to get that result is far different than the version of themselves that they actually are. And it takes a tremendous amount of work for them to actually shed that old school version of themselves and become that next version, so that they can achieve the things that they want to achieve. Like, your goals, most of your goals, in my opinion, should be more identity goals. Should be more like, yes, I want these things, and I have a clear idea that like, this is the type of life I want to live, but who's the type of person that gets to live that type of life? And that's the advantage of having the podcast too. Because now I get to go meet a bunch of people who live the life that I want to live and be like, okay, who are you? Like, what are the actions that you take on a daily basis? What are the habits that you have? How are your relationships with your family, with your friends, with your business partners? Like, what does your life look like from this 30,000 foot view perspective? Who are you as a person that enabled you to be able to accomplish these things in life and to live that type of life that you get to live? That's a far more important question.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of had the coming of age story so far, which is all the things that you tried that you wanted to do. I think in the next one, we can kind of talk about how you decide who you want to be. Like, how do you establish those values? I think we can pick up there.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about the podcast and stuff like that from there.